Welcome to our deep dive today into Quantum Detective, the Alice Chen Files, the sixth book in this series. We've got excerpts from the print edition, and wow, this one gets really interesting. It's a detective story, sure, but not the typical type. We were talking time travel, quantum consciousness,
Yeah.
and really makes you question what's real.
Yeah, the author, Ray Stonehouse, she really sets that tone from the very beginning. Right in the preface, there's this warning about timeline variations, and it makes you think. Is even the book itself, changing? It's brilliant, draws you right in.
Totally. It's like walking into a hall of mirrors, but the reflections are all distorted. And then we meet Detective Ethan Reeves, and that sense of unease just intensifies. He's transferring from the Paranormal Defense Unit, that's the PDU, to the Temporal Resource Unit, the TRU. And this isn't just a normal transfer. It's because things are getting really out of hand with these temporal crimes.
And we see how bad it is with what happened to Officers Phillips and Coffey. They got caught in a temporal cascade, their bodies frozen, but their consciousness scattered throughout time. It really makes it hit home that we're not just talking about theories here.
Makes you almost wish we could just go back to dealing with werewolves and vampires, right? But then we meet Alice Chen, and there's no escaping this quantum world. She's right in the middle of this shift from the supernatural to the temporal, and there's real tension between the PDU and the TRU because of it.
It's more than just tension between departments, though. It reflects how society is struggling to deal with the fact that the rules of reality are changing. The PDU, they're dealing with the physical consequences, the bodies, they represent the old way of thinking that we can contain this stuff.
While the TRU, they're chasing criminals through time. They represent the need for new approaches, new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, how would our own institutions handle something like this?
Right. And then there's the villain, Anderson. He's learned how to weaponize time. He creates these paradox loops, like with the Jensen girl. She's existing in 3 places at once. It's terrifying, and it makes you think about free will. If someone can control time, can they control our choices?
And Anderson isn't keeping this knowledge to himself. He's building a network, teaching others how to do it. It's like giving everyone a loaded gun, and not just any gun, one that can rewrite reality.
And Dr. Werther, a key researcher, she warns that reality itself is becoming unstable. Locks just failing, people dying in one timeline, but alive in another. The very fabric of time is weakening. It's like the universe is coming apart.
And the author uses such vivid imagery to describe it. Like the sky, she describes it cracking like glass. You can see different time periods through the cracks. Buildings aging and then becoming young again. Traffic lights flashing every color at once. It's a visual representation of chaos, and it really gets under your skin.
In the middle of all this, we have this object, a brass mask. But it's not just any mask. It's described as a masterpiece of temporal engineering. It has these gears that shift and quantum circuitry that seems to move when you look at it. It's a symbol of how technology is being used to manipulate time and consciousness.
It's creepy. And then there are these lock picks designed to manipulate time, but they also entangle the user's consciousness with their target.
Right, like a temporal hive mind. It's fascinating, but also terrifying. Who's controlling this network? What are they trying to do?
Now let's talk about the setting. Daybridge. It's not just a random city. They had this huge containment breach back in 1963, and since then the whole city has been adapting, preparing for something like this. Even the police academy teaches temporal awareness.
It's like the city itself is evolving, but is it evolving on its own or is someone guiding it?
And then we learn about Alice's past, about her sister Sarah, who vanished under strange circumstances. Sarah left this bracelet with charms that show glimpses of different timelines, and she warned about locks being picked. It all ties in.
Definitely. Sarah's disappearance is connected to what's happening now. But how deep does that connection go?
Then there's Dr. Wright, who explains this concept of temporal consciousness, the ability to perceive time as something you can change. He talks about the 3 stages of awareness: echoes, resonance, and awakening. And guess what? Those brass masks, they're designed to speed up this development.
So someone or something is trying to force human evolution. And that brings us to the Society. They've been manipulating time since that 1963 breach in Daybridge. They use a device called the Chronolith to rewrite reality. They're playing the long game, and Sarah's disappearance is part of it.
They're messing with the city hospital, too, using a quantum storm to collect consciousness patterns from people who are temporally sensitive. Their goal is a consciousness singularity, collapsing all timelines into one reality that they control.
Imagine a world with no free will. That's what they want. But it seems there are people fighting back.
Yeah, the Daybridge Underground, they're trying to counter the society. They're developing things like quantum anchors to create stable bubbles of reality, and they're using the masks to shield people.
It shows that even against incredible power, there are always people who will fight for freedom. You know, while we're talking about people trying to control things, I keep thinking about that temporal research facility and this guy, Thompson, who worked there. It was like the center for all this research on consciousness, extracting it and how it connected to human evolution and, get this, quantum consciousness.
So, like, they were trying to figure out the limits of what humans could do, how our minds work with reality itself.
Exactly. But of course, it seems like Thompson's research might have ended up in the wrong hands.
Okay, I'm following. So how does this Veil person fit into all of this? I mean, she's got these amazing quantum abilities, right?
She does, and she has some very interesting and kind of disturbing ideas about how humans evolved. She thinks it was programmed, like someone or something put instructions into reality itself to guide how we developed.
Wait, programmed? You mean like some kind of cosmic software update?
Yeah, think of it like that. It raises so many questions, though, right? Like, what about free will? Are we all just puppets? And who or what is pulling the strings?
And what if someone messes with that programming? Like, what if Veil's extraction techniques are doing that without her even realizing it?
That's the scary part. She might be doing the right thing, but with consequences she doesn't even know about. And we see those consequences playing out in Daybridge. Reality is breaking down, the past, present, and future all crashing together. It's chaos.
So Daybridge is like this giant experiment, and the people living there have no idea they're part of it. I mean, streets with cars from different decades, businesses operating across centuries, even vampires and werewolves are having trouble controlling their powers.
It really makes you think, if those creatures who exist outside the normal rules are struggling, what hope do the rest of us have? It shows that when reality itself breaks down, it affects everyone.
Okay, so how is anyone even trying to deal with this? I mean, the police can't just ignore temporal crimes, right?
Right. And we actually see the police adapting, which is pretty amazing. They're setting up this covert network of investigators who specialize in temporal crimes. They're figuring out how to document and prosecute crimes that happen across multiple timelines. It's like building a whole new legal system for a reality that's in constant flux.
It sounds incredibly difficult. And speaking of difficult, remember Project Kronos? That researcher, Morton, who was trying to control probability, what happened with that?
Well, think about it. Imagine being able to control chance itself. You could guarantee outcomes, prevent things from happening. It would change everything.
It's like playing God with the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why the Shadow Protocol, that secretive group we talked about before, they had him assassinated. They saw him as a threat to their own plans.
Wow, so it's not just about theories anymore. It's about power. Who has it and what they're willing to do to keep it. Makes all this temporal stuff feel even more real and dangerous.
Absolutely. And it brings us to another group, the network. They're people who are temporally sensitive, and they're trying to figure out how to control their abilities, but they're also trying to protect reality itself. They understand how dangerous this stuff is, but they also see the potential.
So they're like time travelers with a conscience.
Kind of, yeah. They know that being aware of time, being able to affect it, it's a double-edged sword. You can use it for good or bad, and they want to make sure it's used for the right reasons.
It's a noble goal, but a tough one, especially with that entity we talked about before, the one that's erasing parts of human history.
Right, and we still don't know why it's doing that. Is it trying to keep us from evolving too quickly? Is it protecting us from ourselves? Or is it something worse?
It's scary to think about. Our whole history, everything we know, might be being manipulated by something we don't even understand.
It is scary. And what's worse, the entity feeds on temporal energy, on timelines themselves. So it's not just watching us, it's actively shaping us. But there are these memory keepers who are fighting back. They're trying to restore those lost timelines, those lost pieces of human history.
It's amazing to think about memory as a weapon against something that's trying to control time itself. Really makes you appreciate how important our stories are, our history.
Absolutely. And for me, that's what makes this story so fascinating. It takes these real-world concepts, quantum physics, time travel, and blends them with a story that makes you think, that makes you question everything.
It's like science fiction meeting philosophy, but in a way that's really engaging.
And it's not just theoretical anymore. We see in Daybridge what happens when someone can actually manipulate time. The consequences are real.
Yeah, it's not a game. And Daybridge is having to adapt to this new reality, new technology, new ways of living, new ways of thinking about time itself. It's incredible.
And it's not always easy, of course. There are setbacks, sacrifices, even times when it seems like the whole city is going to collapse. But the people keep going. They adapt. They find solutions. It shows how resilient humans can be.
That's what's so hopeful about all this. It's not just in Daybridge either. In real life, we're seeing people pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Scientists, artists, philosophers, they're all exploring these ideas. It's an exciting time to be alive, even with all the challenges.
Right. We might not understand everything that's happening, but we have the potential to not just survive, but thrive in this new era.
It's all about how we choose to respond. And I think that's what this deep dive has been all about, exploring those choices, both in the story and in our own lives. So we've spent the last couple of parts digging into this world of quantum detective with all the time travel and quantum physics.
Right.
But what really gets to me is how it all connects back to the characters, especially Alice and Ethan. It's their story, really.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, their own growth kind of mirrors what's happening to the whole city of Daybridge. Alice, she's got this connection to her sister, and she's temporally sensitive anyway, so she's almost like instinctively in tune with all these shifts.
He really is.
Yeah.
Like, she just gets it.
Yeah.
Moving between timelines, no problem.
Yeah.
Almost like she was born for this.
Right. And then there's Ethan. His background's in the paranormal defense unit, so he's coming at it from a more, grounded place, using his training, trying to analyze everything. He's got to bridge the old and the new.
That's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
The old and the new. And the way they work together, their strengths and weaknesses, it's like a mini version of what Daybridge as a whole needs to do.
Exactly. You need the gut feeling and the logic, the supernatural and the tech all working together.
But it's not just the external threats, right? This temporal stuff messes with them personally, too. Alice, she sees all these different timelines where her sister's fate is different. Imagine that, knowing there are worlds where she's alive, but being stuck in one where she's gone.
I can't even imagine. And Ethan, he's questioning everything he thought he knew. The past isn't even stable anymore. It can make you crazy thinking about it too much.
No kidding. But here's the thing. Even with all that, they find a way to support each other. They get closer because of this chaos, share the weight of it.
It's kind of beautiful in a way. Shows that even when everything's falling apart, those human connections, love, friendship, it keeps us grounded.
It does, gives us strength. And we see it not just with them, but all over Daybridge. People are resilient. They find ways to adapt, to make a new kind of life in this crazy new reality.
And that's what I love about Quantum Detective. It's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, it's scary, but there's this hopefulness, too. This idea that we can handle anything, even if reality itself is changing.
Exactly. It's about how we choose to respond to the impossible. And that's what makes it so thought-provoking, We've talked about the science, the world building, all that, but it's the human element that really sticks with me.
Me too. And that's what I hope people take away from our deep dive today. Quantum Detective is more than just a fun story. It makes you think about what's real, about what connects us, about what it means to be human in a world that's constantly changing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If you want a book that'll challenge you, that'll stick with you long after you finish it, this is it. It's worth the deep dive, for sure.
Totally agree. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to embrace the unknown.